Tonight we have a very special presentation to talk about our microforce, and one of the reasons we're filming it is where Dave, with our Veterans in Focus project, can make a little film about our microforce. And Charles Reith has been working with us since we started the microforce, and he's really done a terrific job, and we're getting ready to plant another one on January the 18th up at Heritage Harbor in Bradenton. So put that on your calendar right now and come up and volunteer. We're going to start at 9, and we hope to be wrapped up by about 2 o'clock, maybe earlier if we have enough volunteers. So even if you can't do physical labor, come up, bring a couple of drinks for the people that are laboring, and it's a social opportunity also. So please try to participate in that. I'm not going to read Charles's entire resume. We'd be here too long, but I'm going to shorten it up a little bit. Charles is a retired restoration ecologist with experience in Africa, Europe, and the Americas. His wetlands reconstruction has focused on the reestablishment of valuable ecosystem services such as water purification, flood control, carbon sequestration, and wildlife habitat. Clients for his wetlands planning and management have included universities, research firms, and municipalities, all of whom have sought to improve their land resources, not only on their own properties, but also on the impact to the ecological health and productivity of the larger ecosystem. Charles has a PhD in ecology from the University of New Mexico and 40 years of experience in industry and academia. He's been a professor at 4 universities and advisor to international corporations and ministries in over a dozen countries. He's published 3 books, including Principles and Methods of Reclamation Science, a comprehensive compendium of strategies to restore ecological vitality to landscapes disturbed by fire, flooding, or human activity such as mining and forestry. He currently serves as a science advisor for South Bay, Sarasota at Florida House, a board member of the Sarasota Urban Reforesters, and a member of the Sarasota Bay Watershed Plan Update Stakeholder Advisory Group. And he's also a great supporter of FLVCS, and he's one of the leaders of our environmental working group. So I'm proud, and it's a special pleasure to introduce you, Charles. So the floor is yours, my friend.
Well, thank you very much. And I have an important guest with me, if you haven't met my wife, Penny, who's visiting this meeting to be a part of this and has very much been part of this, this initiative. And it really is special for me to spend time with you talking about it. This was something we were all anticipating or exploring as a prospect some years ago, and now we're well along, and it's really time to celebrate some successes, some reputation and respect that we have earned, and to think a little bit about how are we going to harvest our present momentum to even further expand our influence, our beneficial influence in the Suncoast area. So are you going to be bringing the slides up here pretty soon? And while you do that, just a couple of really important thank yous I would like to make. I've been working with a lot of you, and I could spend my whole time saying thanks, but I'll just extend a big acknowledgement to Gene, who's the guy who brought me to this dance. He's the one who introduced me to this organization, and also Rotary, and has been working very hard as a proponent of the microforest. And then perhaps the most heartfelt tip of the hat to Mike Burns. Yeah, I'll go for that. The good Lord handed out Mike and me equal doses of passion. We have a lot of passion, each of us. And I use mine kind of organizing projects, explaining and advocating, and sometimes being very persevering. For instance, sending 17 revisions of our permission request to the county to get the celery fields done. That's important, and I'm proud of that. But what Mike did to make the celery fields really happen, to get out there and plant those trees and overcome obstacles and not get discouraged, I really consider you a wonderful, respected brother in arms, and any successes in the microforest, and we've got a lot to celebrate, and we'll have more. It's as much because of you as me, so I really say thank you. All right, so what my objective is today, and I would love to have a pointer, but I'm not sure I'm going to get one, so I'm going to, as instructed, call attention to different parts of the slides, and I'll call your attention to the list at the bottom. What we're here to do today, we're going to celebrate the success of this microforest program, hands down, fabulous, rewarding, and unique success that no one else can claim, and I'll explain why that's not an overly broad assertion. I'm going to sharpen up the science a little bit. Everybody's going to get a little bit more science about trees and soils, and this is not only going to help us with microforests, but I said I would like to expand our beneficial influence in the Suncoast as far as climate change goes, and you will learn that trees and soil are key agents in combating climate change. And I'm going to just elevate your knowledge perhaps a little bit on those subjects. And then I'm going to lay out some future opportunities, one of whom just walked in. Erin, what's your last name? Melina, who is the director of the Mangrove School. So I'm going to have you in suspense. About 3/4 of the way through, I'm going to tell you about the Mangrove School, where they believe no child should be left inside. And how good is that? And so I think we're going to have a contribution possibility there that I'm very excited about. So looking, at the right, I want to talk a little bit about the organizations here. Florida Veterans for Common Sense is the originator and the actualizer of this idea. It never would have happened without Florida Veterans for Common Sense. In order to bring partners, increase our operational capacity and our relationships with stakeholders and governments, we have these partners that include Florida Veterans for Common Sense Fund, which provides incredibly valuable funding. I can't say enough about that. The Rotary, Sarasota Bay Chapter Rotary, they have been very helpful, provided some funding and solutions to avoid red tide. And we decided to give that a working acronym, and when you hear me talk about SURF, that's short for Suncoast Urban Reforesters, and it is this partnership that we, Florida Veterans for Common Sense, initiated as our operational agent for making this happen. I really wanted that to be clearly understood. Okay, next slide. And the main mission that we have, SURF, is to solve problems in the urban environment that are created by the climate crisis. And the three urgent problems that we are addressing, and they desperately need to be addressed, is the urban heat island effect. As you've heard, it's getting hotter, and that heat is going to get extremely oppressive in this area. Coastal water pollution, which is magnified by the climate crisis. That's the red tide and other toxic or noxious algae that are fostered by land uses and runoff that carries nutrients, but then incubated, or what's the better word, just warmed up and therefore fired up in terms of intensity by the warmer temperatures, by climate. And finally, storm-related vulnerability. And I will speak about that. Trees should be assets against a storm. But we have two problems, two strikes against us here in Sarasota. One is we're cutting our trees down like crazy as our development strategy. And number two, we're not taking care of the trees that we have. And we're doing our best to plant trees. That's the microforest initiative. But part of this expansion that I'm going to talk about is to influence in a positive way tree husbandry and the use of trees to protect this community against future storms. And we all know they're coming and they'll get worse and worse by having what I call a sentinel canopy of protective trees. So we're fighting climate change, and right now our number one tool that's shown great effectiveness are the microforests. Next. And microforests use trees. Trees are the most powerful way to improve the urban environment. Calming the wind against damage, creating shade to cool the environment down below them, intercepting water, and then dropping leaves that creates an absorbent layer of duff or spongy floor. All of those benefits, they're innumerable, and that's why you see so many balls in the tree and so many in the soil. And then if you click here, you'll see the ones highlighted. And I want to be sure, I bet the people who are online in this case, like watching a hockey game, is better on TV than in person. You're probably seeing the slides better than the people in the room. But I really highlight the carbon sequestration, that drives climate, works against climate change. The absorption of moisture to prevent that moisture from moving out quickly like it does off driveways, streets, parking lots, or even turf, which isn't very good at retaining water, and therefore it prevents flooding, and then taking water and sending it back to the atmosphere that would otherwise transport nutrients that causes red tide. So trees are the number one agent that we can put into our urban landscape to increase its resilience against climate change. But there's one problem with trees, which this will show if you hit the click there, and that is they don't grow very fast. It's a little frustrating, especially if in your 50s, 60s, 70s, to plant a tree, and it's a virtuous thing, knowing that that tree is going to sometimes take a little while to have the breadth, the size to benefit climate. But that's one of the things that we have done very well, is combated this problem of the slow growth of trees by adopting the mechanisms of this man, Miyawaki. Okay, Miyawaki is this Japanese botanist who asked himself the question, how can we make trees grow even faster? And, well, not just grow even faster, grow super fast. How can we accelerate their growth rate to realize their benefits, the ecological benefits of trees in the urban landscape more quickly? And so what Miyawaki suggested is that we plant these forests in the urban environment, that they be drawn exclusively from native stock, in other words, what we know already grows there, but with exceptional diversity, with many more species than you would even see in a nature walk at Mayaka or Oscar Scherer. So all native, exceptional diversity, and the Miyawaki strategy is to plant them very, very densely. We plant them super densely, and that creates shade competition. And the way trees work is when they have some of their leaves start getting shadowed in the morning and afternoon, they actually respond hormonally and say, I got to grow fast, or this guy next to me is going to shade me out. So if you have all these trees and they're all shading each other with, low sun in the morning and afternoon, they're all getting these hormonal signals, grow fast or you get shaded out. And that's why Miyawaki's advocates assert that his forests grow 100-year forest in just 10 years. 10 times faster than a natural forest. And that not only produces the benefits of the forest that much faster, but that fast growth means that these valuable services like water uptake, carbon sequestration, soil building, they all happen faster They happen, the full name of our what we call microforests, the full name is high performance microforests because they perform so well in their fast growth rate. Okay, so yeah, it's the shade competition that's listed at the bottom. And so Miyawaki's interesting ideas have been adopted all over the world. And if you browse on the internet, microforest or his name, Miyawaki, you'll see about microforests in all these different places. And they should feel really great about it, and I'm really excited about it, but we're better. Okay, why are we better? Because we've taken the Miyawaki methodology and turbocharged it, and I'm not sure that anybody else has done that. And the way that we have turbocharged it is by paying much more attention to the soil and using a whole nother body of thought, and that is permaculture. This book right here, which I'm going to give to you after, so you can pass it around. And as I'm talking, I want you to just open it up and look at all the amazing diagrams in here. This is a book by an Australian agriculture professor who said everything I learned is wrong. That agriculture is not going to work and it's not going to take minor tweaks. It takes a whole new paradigm in growing, in the design of the forests or the farms, instead of row crops into agroforests, in the seasonality of farming, the relationship with water, and of importance to our unique success is the better management of soil. Permaculture has 5 chapters in here on how to make your soil really rich and biologically productive, and why not to limit your soil by adding things like chemical fertilizers and pesticides, which destroy the very biology that makes a soil successful. And we use permaculture soil building techniques, and probably some of the other microforest people do, but we're the first one to do it in a disciplined and repetitive way, and for that reason we should feel pretty darn good about ourselves. So what permaculture does is it reforms the relationship between humans and soil, but what you do need to see there is that below that tree or bush, whatever it is, are lots of different layers of plants, not plants, of microbes, of centipedes, earthworms, springtails, termites, ants, you name it, and a lot of stuff that's too small to see, like fungi and blue-green algae and different microscopic worms and so forth. And they all interact with each other. It's called the soil food web. One handful of soil has more organisms than the 10 billion people on the planet, or we're getting there. What is it, 8 now? Yeah. Such a dreadful number. So here comes a better picture of it that's bigger so you can see, that's meant to show a little better in a big room, just how important those organisms are, those different microbes. They're eating the roots, they eat each other, they defecate, they die, they leave their body masses there. And this biology, this biological engine is what makes a soil healthy. And we know that, and our methodology exploits that to the best. I can't remember exact order of slides, so bring the next one up. Yeah, okay, so this is the point that I want to say, and I'm hoping Cody and the other members of the Environmental Working Group are watching, in which case they're going to approve of the fact that I'm taking time. It is our policy as an organization to help people understand that that the soil food web is destroyed by chemical fertilizers. You're going to hear a lot of the chemical industry, fertilizer industry, like phosphates, saying, oh, you got to permit more mines. Don't worry about Piney Point. It's a problem, yeah, but you can't farm without phosphates. We're going to make sure we institutionally understand that exactly the contrary is true, that when you farm with phosphates, you make it much harder, you start a process that could be compared to a drug addiction, And you got to keep those chemical fertilizers out of the soil and allow the soil food web to realize its full functionality. The next time you think about spraying some fertilizer on there, just realize there's a whole bunch of little microbes that are probably living in a water film around the soil particle that's got a pH of about 7.8. And as soon as you spray with your liquid fertilizer, that pH drops down to about 3. And all of those small organisms are fried. And then you got all the organisms, the nematodes and the collembolans, they eat them, and all of a sudden their food base is gone. And so this natural engine of mineralizing and circulating nutrients is rendered like a desert in the soil by chemical applications. My work, as some of you know, was in Africa. And one of the biggest things I did is explain to the tribes to stop using chemical fertilizers that were being given them by the government because they were killing their soil. Soil that before the fertilizer came along had a lot of natural fertility. I just explained a lot of stuff to you, and you may or may not find it easy to remember, but you'll find it very easy to learn because we live in a time where there are what do I call it? Yeah, 2 great movies that tell this whole story. And if you watch those 2 movies, everything I've told you will come clear with lots of examples and explained by charismatic people like Woody Harrelson, Jason Mraz, and even Tom Brady is in those movies he is. So Kiss the Ground is all about the use of soil as an agent to reverse climate change in every field of planting, not just farming, but forestry and urban horticulture and wetlands and everything. And then fantastic fungi, which I didn't really emphasize enough, the fungal component, which is what we really encourage in our soil, is at the base of that soil food web. When you have lots of fungi, you attract all the larger organisms to eat it and then defecate and die, and they're like the primary trophic level, the base level of this vigorous soil food web. And some of us just recently read about what are called mother trees, which are they've shown these really big ancient trees have fungi that may date all the way back to like the Pleistocene that have a huge influence over a very large area. So when you cut a mother tree, I was reminded of that movie Avatar. Not the new one, I haven't watched that, but the old one. You remember there was one really big tree? The mother tree has this extremely pervasive influence over the ecological vitality of acres and acres of forest around it. Okay, so our unique methodology. This is what we do that, to the best of our knowledge, nobody else is doing, is we use the Miyawaki strategy with the very dense planting, using natives and then all layers, meaning, and you'll come out on the 18th and see this. We put in grasses and forbs, we put in small shrubs, big shrubs, subtrees, and canopies. We put them all in at once. And so that creates the shade competition and the rapid growth. And then we use Mollison, that's the author of this book called Permaculture, and his methods for soil building, which some of you have participated in, called sheet mulching. And in fact, I think there's pictures on the bottom of the steps in our microforest that shows how the first step, which we've now done for the next microforest, is to lay cardboard, a continuous sheet of cardboard over the entire grassy area that we're converting. That suppresses the grass. It cools the area down. It keeps the sun's light off of it and holds in moisture, and it just immediately launches the growth of fungi underneath the cardboard. You go back a week later, you pull it up, you'll see the cardboard has this lattice work of white fungi. Then we stack on lots of wood chips, 6 inches or more of mulch. That's going to feed the system. We don't use chemicals. We feed our system with this organic material that will decompose. Then we pre-drill before our volunteer day all of the pockets that are we're going to be putting the plants in. And then on volunteer day, our process, and again, I think this is kind of unique, is extremely participatory. We reach out and get people from all different kind of areas, and they spend a day with us learning about the importance of the microforest, the importance of the soil as an agent to combat climate crisis and mitigate red tide. And suddenly, these kind of hopeless issues that, well, that's for them to figure out over there in the Paris Accord and cop this, cop that. All of a sudden, that is replaced with a sense of, oh, I as an individual can participate in resolving the climate crisis. And our next planting day, besides having, I hope, almost every one of you, will have the students and faculty of the Mangrove School, the master gardeners from Manatee, and a bunch of district governors from 15 different countries from Rotary. So we're going to have a fabulous event, very participatory, everybody learning. So bottom line is, we are, as far as I know, the only that have combined permaculture with Miyawaki to do these microforests, and the purpose is to realize all the benefits that you see on the right there. I don't need to read them, just benefiting climate, benefiting, and of course that's local, benefiting global climate, and then benefiting local attributes such as storm resilience and water quality. Okay, and another thing we might do that's unique, again, a lot of, this is a new field, these microforests, but we quantify our success or our effectiveness, this high performance I'm talking about. Jack Merriam's online, and he developed these graphs that show, starting now up for the next 30 years, how much carbon is being pulled out of the atmosphere that would otherwise foster global warming and gets trapped in the soil or entrained in the biomass and eventually gets into the soil. And we forecast what that carbon uptake is going to be. And we've done it with some rigor at some of our sites, collected the soil samples before we started, and we have some budget to measure the trees each year, and we're using a model which Jack uses, and there's a professor at New College, formerly at New College, who works with us, who uses this model called iTree. And so we're quantifying the effectiveness of our system in carbon sequestration against climate change. That's the top one. And then the lower one in taking water that would otherwise transport nutrients to the Gulf, fostering red tide, and sending it to the atmosphere. Okay, so what a celebration. We have 4 of these in now. Okay, right there, you can see the middle one on the right is the celery fields. That was our first one. It's an absolutely beautiful forest. We didn't execute it perfectly, but man, the results couldn't be more beautiful in terms of the trees and their vitality. They handled the hurricane. They got beat up a little bit, and Mike got them all back vertical. Many of us went out and helped him for that. Then we had 2 at Stony Brook that you see on the right and the left at the bottom. And Stony Brook was super helpful. They provided some money. In this case, we really did exactly the combination I was describing of the Miyawaki and the permaculture. And so those forests are growing breathtakingly fast. I would invite you to go there. If you're interested, you'll have to talk to me. And that's one of our concerns about Stony Brook, is it was not as available to the public as we would like. And looking forward, I think that we will have more public availability of our forests. But they sure bore out the concept, and they got us great recognition and visibility. Then Colony Cove, 4 or 5 of you were at Colony Cove, right? The Colony Cove forest was also a little bit imperfect. We didn't do as much sheet mulching as we needed to, so we had a big problem with weeds, but we let them grow, and most of those weeds have now kind of topped out. And sure enough, it's almost like waiting for the smoke to clear and seeing if your flag is still flying. Sure enough, all the plants that we put in are doing fine. So even though we had an imperfect execution and a lot of weeds, the trees that we spent money on and put effort to plant are doing okay. And so that's going to be a good one. But the one that's going in next is called Heritage Harbor. And this is kind of a cheesy, slow animation. I'd hardly ever use that. But in this case, I really wanted to get your attention to the fact that we're putting in one that's 2 exits north of the UTC Mall. That's Highway 64. And it's the best location yet. It's a perfect L-shaped area of turf that surrounds a playground. It's got a mixture of completely open with no canopy trees and then kind of ornamental, big canopy trees, but with open space under them into which we will plant. And we've had incredible support from the host community, including up to $20,000 host donation. So we're very grateful for that. And you all are donating gratefully or generously, and I'm grateful too. So it's January 18th, and here's what you'll see when you get there. The site is a ½ acre. You can see the playground has a blue floor. You can see that in the middle. And then you can see the brown around it. That's where we have put our cardboard. And then we've layered our wood chips so that the soil is perfectly prepared and incubating, meaning that soil food web is growing feverishly in anticipation of those plant roots to help those trees grow. And down on the bottom is a view from the parking lot, and that's actually, you know, as I said, one of the disappointments with Stony Brook is that it's not as available to the public. Colony Cove is theoretically available, but it's certainly off the beaten path. This is at a park with a baseball, some player. What's the name of that player that they named the baseball league out after? It's not Babe Ruth, but it's so it's a really popular baseball league, and there's huge number of people come there, and there's a huge number of people that walk around that lake. So this park, even though it's private, which made it easier to get permission than with the 17 draft county, it's public because anybody can go there. And I've been telling some of my friends who are a little incapacitated, people had surgery, or, you know, they say, well, I never go out there because, you know, it's going to be, I have to walk a long way. I said, we're going to keep a row of parking places right next to it so you can drive up and look out your window and see the fun. So you can drive right up to this. So one of the reasons, the benefit, if you're going to do something good, the feel-good factor is even greater if somebody is going to benefit a lot. And the kids and the families that use that playground are going to benefit a lot. Their playground, instead of being sort of right next to a parking lot with a lot of traffic and people racing their car engines and the smoke and all that, instead they're going to be cooled down by the forest, isolated from all those noisy cars. Trees are huge agents in cleaning the air. I haven't really talked about that. And then sound abatement. The trees will keep the noisy cars from interfering with the quiet playground experience. And then we're really emphasizing education. The quote at the bottom is small, but it says, "Let nature be your teacher." That's why I'm so excited about the Mangrove School. We're going to be putting in a lot of signs to teach kids about nature. There's an aerial view of it, and you can see, I just have to step over here. You can see the brown trails. The brown trails are like the one that you see on the bottom. That's actually an existing trail at Stony Brook. And so it's just on the duff or forest floor between the trees. That's where the kids are going. I can just see them racing around, really excited, coming around the corners. And then the white trail you see at the top, that's a real-time picture. That's the team, Zach, that does our work, actually put in a beautiful crushed rock trail that's got nice boundary material. And so people roll their strollers or whatever over that, which wasn't there before. And then these signs. We'll have a big sign, not that big, but a welcoming sign that's actually going to have a QR code that links to David's movie. And then it'll acknowledge you folks, us folks, Florida veterans and the Florida Veteran Fund, as well as the other SERV stakeholders. And then Climate First Bank gave us $10,000. God bless them. And then Veranza gave us a lot of organic material. That's a big kind of new organics recycling firm here. And then others. So we're going to have the welcoming sign, about 10 signs that teach kids about nature. I'm going to be very involved in that and be welcoming anybody else who would be interested in brainstorming what those signs should say and look like. We have budget for them. And then at least 40, maybe 50 signs on the lower right that identify each of the 50 species of plants that are there. And have a QR code that when you point your phone to it will tell you more about that plant. So wow, treasure trove of education, fabulous ecological benefits, and at a really accessible place. Okay, that's a picture of mulching day. Some of you guys were out there. Gene worked really hard. We had the first shift on the lower left are the master gardeners. You can see that the cardboard has been spread and the mulch is piled. And then the second group in the middle are Ringling students who came and actually finished it off. And Gene was there for the whole thing. So good on you. That was wonderful. And then another fun thing to say about this is the upper left picture shows the cardboard spread, and if you look carefully in the back is a pickup truck pulling a trailer. That's rotary cardboard. That's cardboard that was used to package relief supplies sent to the counties south of us. And rather than just recycle all that, which is not as good a destination for cardboard as one might think, they brought the cardboard to us, where, in my opinion, it will have a much more valuable final contribution in its life cycle. And then now that's how the site looks today. Couple of pictures. We have a big "What's Happening Here" sign, so anybody walks up and says, "Well, I don't remember that trail there, and what's all that wood chips? What are all those wood chips doing?" They can read about it and read who did it, and also read that on January 18th, we're going to have a volunteer day, and really look forward to a fabulous experience planting those. So, wow, so much success. We're going to have a lot of media coverage. The last one had a lot of media coverage. I think we need to maybe have a little strategy to follow up on some of the media coverage. And where do we take this success? Where do we take this reputational, what brand equity is what I learned in business is a term for it, and expand our influence in this community? Well, we certainly want another microforest that's successful, and that's why Aaron is here, because I think I have a perfect location. We know where to find the money, but that microforest will lend itself to a broader relationship. So that is her school. I welcome you to go to their website, the Mangrove School of Sarasota. And it's a school, you have 90 students. Wow, we will have a lot of people out there. So it's a K-8 school strongly emphasizing outdoor learning. It gives the basics that you need for curricular development, preparation for advanced education, but all outside and all service driven. So they're going to be out there, but they also have, they're presently residing at a church, and thanks to Erin and her team's initiative, they have bought a property, and here's where it is. If you look at the lower left, at least toward the bottom there, you'll see that shape. That's our microforest, the celery fields, the first wonderful Florida Vets microforest. And then right smack in the middle are the 11 acres that Erin's team has bought, called the Mangrove School of Sarasota. It's right next to Big Cats. We need to get our hands on some of their manure and bedding. And it's right behind that geodesic dome that you see as you drive past the celery fields on Palmer there. We have a couple of blown up views. The one on the left is an engineering drawing. The one on the right is a rudimentary permaculture design. The key is there's a lot of outdoor classrooms. It's outdoor learning spaces where kids will learn to grow foods, butterfly gardens, things like that, and then appropriate refuges against bad weather and so forth. So there'll be some permanent structure there, but it'll be an outdoor campus. And I'm envisioning there, doesn't show too well, but there's a great area on the right for a microforest. I'm anticipating writing a grant proposal to the Sarasota Bay Estuary Program for about $7,000 to $8,000. We'll have to come up with a combination of matching funds and labor commitments and so forth. And we'll put that microforest in a way that will provide the maximum services to the health of this land and its rate of development. Because one of the advantages of microforests is how fast they grow. And we want to leverage that to make that land valuable and readily occupiable and not too wet because it's a little puddled right now. And microforests are the key. But we're very excited even with, at the beginning as we envision the microforest, to put a food forest in there soon as well. And you know, when I talk about exploring a broader relationship, I want to talk about such things as being involved with that school and maybe having a resource sharing arrangement. If you want to get a twinkle in Jean's eye, just mention an electric tractor. But one of the issues about an electric tractor is where would we keep it? Well, just imagine that the Mangrove School had a shed that had Florida Veterans equipment that we use for our planting. We can even do some of our own germinations and grassroots beginning of our planting cycles and not have to buy so many plants and have all that benefit to us, but also be benefiting to the school by having those equipments available to you and our energies and thinking. So it's a relationship with a terrific high side. Again, leveraging our microforest success toward a relationship that will be a platform for expansion. And then there are other areas, what I call a broader portfolio of beneficial influence, envisioning now that we've established ourselves as being wizards of the trees and how to use them, and that we walk the talk. We're going to have 5 forests in as of January 19th. Let's talk about the bigger things or additional things we can do. And one of the things we have to do is fix our urban forest here. If you went down to Babcock Ranch during Ian, all the trees were fine. But here they fell on all the medians. Those are pictures of live oaks, which would never fall in strong wind normally. But they all flopped over along Honore and elsewhere. I'm sure you saw many examples of big sentinel trees that are adapted to hurricane conditions falling over. And that's because they don't know how to grow them here. They put them in soil right next to grass, and then they water them every single day. And so the plants never send their roots down deep. I actually dug up one on the bottom. You can see it. Every oak has a huge taproot, big as my arm or bigger. Its whole purpose is to go find deep water and anchor it against the wind. But with water coming every day right at the surface with the watering cycle, the taproot was just lying on the ground like a snake or right underneath it. So we need to put big rings of mulch, wood chips, around each tree, stop watering it, except maybe occasional deep watering from a water truck, and change the whole paradigm so that we have a forest like Babcock Ranch does, of trees that won't even blink at Hurricane Ian. Because live oaks, if you go down to the Cheniere, Louisiana, those are the big coastal islands, you see live oaks that have been through 30 hurricanes and they're alive, after 600 years or stuff like that. We need to use our technical expertise and our influence as an esteemed organization to get the community to realize they're not managing their trees right, and we need to start doing it, and we need to start doing it right away. Another area of possible beneficial influence comes up here, and that is restoring channelized waterways. This is pretty interesting too. If you look at Whitaker Bayou, parts of South Creek, parts of Elegras Bayou, they're channelized. And everybody just gives up on them and says, well, there's no beneficial influence there. It's like a dead system, like an LA drainage canal. And that's what Amsterdam used to think too. And Penny will tell you, I just jumped out of my shoes the last time we went to Amsterdam because I saw, if you'll see next, I saw they have these really cool strategies for planting biological systems in their canals and creating all the benefits of an aquatic ecosystem for entraining the nitrogen, supporting life, and keeping the pollution out of the coastal waters, that I think we can understand this technology, get some examples out there, and show the community that our waterways, those portions that are channelized and seemingly dead, in fact, can be agents of biological improvement, just like we've done to turf grass with our microforests. And then finally is seawall mangrove restoration. Situations like you see out there at Bird Key with all seawalls and they've replaced the natural mangrove, that is just magnifying the pollution problem, and it has no wildlife value. And so people all around are developing technology and business strategies to start planting these mangroves along the seawalls, maintaining them so as to preserve the views. It's called the window cut. And then the people on the right, we can make a field trip to talk to them. They're over in Daytona Beach or something like that, and they have launched a successful business paying for these mangrove plantings and then selling shirts, mang gear they call it, these shirts at a premium, and then when you buy the shirt and wear their cool logo, your money goes toward planting mangroves. So we could engage with them and say, hey, we'd like to follow along on what you're doing and start doing some of that over here. Okay, so what I am proposing that we really think about is beginning to crystallize our vision for a branch of Florida Veterans for Common Sense that's dedicated to enhancing urban resilience through all of these urban landscape innovations, all these tree-related innovations, because we've got the scientists, the engineers, the money people, the business people, and the key to making that successful, we really should be thinking as soon as we can, instead of paying project at a time, and I'm so grateful for those project at a time budgets, but think about finding a veteran and putting the word out through veterans who are about to retire, who are really successful and entrepreneurial, kind of like Radar and MASH, and pick those guys and get one of them down here and charter them to generate proposals. People are always sending me information. Gene, you sent me something about impact today, and I've attended some proposal workshops, but I'll tell you what, you get some guy whose salary is partly funded by those proposals, and they know their performance review is keyed on proposals. They get really good at finding them and writing them, and there are many of us who have the expertise, if given proper tasks, provide the technical, the science, the engineering, and the finance to make those proposals successful and have projects. So that's kind of the vision I would have for us. And it's not a vision we have to do in the next month or even this year, but it's really good to have it on our screen and be thinking about it. And when budget allows us, and maybe put the word out that we're looking for a paid executive director like this, for us to realize that there is a breadth, a sufficient breadth of opportunities out there for us to make a difference, because nobody else in this area is doing any of those 4 things appreciably, certainly not in a systematic way. So not only do we have the breadth of capacity, but we got such a good story to tell. 5 successful microforests, and a 6th by the time we put one in at the mangrove school or anywhere else we go. So I told you, this is a celebration. We should feel really, really good about it. I am super grateful to this organization for the funding, to Gene, Mike, guys that are online that have been very involved in this. And I hope you share my optimism for a really great future, enhancing the urban environment through resilient building planting strategies.